Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First, let's talk about hero or murderer, how a New York City mentally ill man was killed by another passenger on the subway in broad daylight. We'll talk a little bit about this very, very disturbing case. We'll also talk about today as being National Day of Prayer. My question is, does the country really care? We'll have that conversation later on. We're going to check in with Brother Michael and Hotep as we discuss the Proud Boys. Some of the top leaders of the Proud Boys group have been convicted of seditious conspiracy. What does that mean? And moving forward, we're going to get an update on the California Reparations Task Force. So stay with us. A lot to talk about in today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. First and foremost, before we get started on our show, did you catch today's episode, the debut of The Frequency here on Black Star Network? If you did not, folks, we are streaming that live. The first show aired this afternoon or earlier today. And let me just tell you, we got a show on our hands here on Black Star Network, y'all. We got a show on our hands. Big shout out to my sister D Barnes holding it down. Very first show off the chain. And I would say, let folks know that The Frequency is on the Black Star Network, that we have an iconic hip hop journalist. We have a hip hop artist. There she go right there. My sister D Barnes holding it down for the culture, for real, for real. Make sure y'all check out The Frequency every Thursday here on the Black Star Network. This is a weekly show that will open up conversations about women, hip hop, and so much more. So big shout out to D Barnes and to the team for making sure that we get a little bit of charge from The Frequency earlier today. All right, folks, let's jump right into the conversations. The big discussion that's happening is about what really happened, what led to a death of a black man who was killed on a subway train right in broad daylight. This is a very, very disturbing case that happened in New York City, folks. And we're not going to show you the video because it's just too horrific. But just know that something right did not happen in a situation gone wrong. Let me just share this with you, and I'm going to bring in my brother Sinedu Okorafor, who is a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist. He is also an activist in the areas of social and racial justice. As we talk about this case, this, again, very, very disturbing case, Brother Sinedu. 30-year-old black man, he was killed by a white passenger who happened to grab him and put him in a chokehold. This was all recorded on camera by a Mr. Juan Alberto Vasquez, who works as a freelance journalist. He posted the horrifying footage on his Facebook page, Luces del Nuevo York. Now, the video is, and again, folks, this is very, very sad. It shows the deceased. We don't know the name of the brother who was killed, but apparently he was in a chokehold by this white passenger. Arms and legs are flailing. He even yelled out that he did not eat, he did not drink. And in some moments before he died, he was just yelling at passengers saying that he was willing to die. Then that's when another passenger got up because they said that some of the riders said that this gentleman acted in a hostile and erratic manner. And so a 24-year-old white passenger approached him, put him in the chokehold, and there he died in his arms. Brother Sinedu, what do we do with this? This is in broad daylight. This is in New York City, the most populous city in the country. This is being recorded. You mean to tell me that no one had the heart or the compassion to see that this man was mentally ill to the point where he wasn't, as far as based on the reports, he did not attack anyone. He just basically, yelling and screaming. But you mean to tell me that no one thought there was a better way to handle a situation, or that this 24-year-old white passenger went too far in how he handled the situation? It's one thing to restrain somebody, but it's another thing to put somebody in a chokehold where you could kill them. What happened? What do you think was the breakdown? What went wrong in the situation, Brother Shanidi?
I mean, I think, a lot is going on. Excuse me. A lot is going on in that situation. And one very disturbing thing that I think we talk about a lot of times is when I read the article, just seeing that word onlookers. And it just shows me how, human beings haven't evolved over time. As a kid, you learn a story about Jesus being crucified and how there were bystanders and onlookers. And I'm confused to why that there's onlookers in 2023 and no one could stop this man. No one could advocate for this person who is now dead. And now for some reason, everybody, again, my experience, it seems like everybody wants to be, eyewitness news, but you could have stopped this. You could have done something. It's a very horrific sight. And they're saying that the man is, mentally ill, but this is just yet another story of a blatant disregard. I don't think anybody is talking about the blatant disregard for human life in this day and age. It's like every human body is as disposable as a file you want to delete off of your phone. And that is in broad daylight. In
broad daylight, bro.
And where is I know New York City's subway is massive, but there's no police. There's such a big campaign to stop fare evasion in New York and in DC, but somebody was able to be killed and nobody could stop it. No enforcement agent, no security, no nothing. It just seems strange to me.
Very strange. Very strange. Deidre, you kicked us off this afternoon. You said, wow. There was no reason for that man to do that, especially on the train. Horrible. Absolutely. I grew up in Baltimore. And, I've taken public transportation when I was in high school, when I was in some parts of my adult years, taking public transportation. You see strange things happening. You report it. If somebody is creating a disturbance on the public transit, you report it. You say something. You talk to a train person. Hey, we got a guy in here. You get MTA police who is more equipped to handle this. But this level of vigilantism is out of control. I'm sorry to say it like this, folks, but I'm not sorry, because this is what it is. We're seeing more and more white males who think that they are the judge, the jury, and the executioner. Like who made you that? Especially when you're talking about the handling of Black lives.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
For sure.
If you're not shooting at somebody who rings at your damn doorbell or pulling up in your driveway, now you want to put them in a chokehold. We already seen that in New York.
And you know what's interesting, juxtaposed with what's going on currently with the Tucker Carlson situation? It's right. The illusion. Tucker Carlson had said something along the lines of, in a text message a bombshell that came out, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, that he was describing somebody during the January 6th and said that this isn't typical white people behavior, which again, that is a very infuriating and very psychological statement, because white people been barbaric, right? That's history tells you that's how we got this land, how they got this land, and then we were brought over. Barbarism. And it is this day and age where white men in particular believe that they have autonomy over everything and everyone. And based on society, unfortunately, fortunately, Black people have fallen into this cocoon of hiding themselves and not handling themselves in a way where I think we have to defend ourselves by all means, because it's an extermination. I don't care whether it's a police officer or a stranger on the subway. These people get off. They get very short times. We see that some of the folks involved in, what's his name, the killing of George Floyd, some of them getting 2, 3, 4 years. The most recent guy, 3 years, I think 58 months or something like that. Like
right.
Which then means that, when you were a kid, a punishment detailed the severity of a crime. If you were just sent to your room for a second, you might tell yourself, I might do the thing again because I'm just going to be sent to my room. And that's where we are. People are just getting sent to their room for these heinous crimes. And I really think something needs to be done about it. And it will be great for that to be a legal thing, but we'll be waiting forever for the legal system.
Absolutely. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk more about the details of this case and talk to our brother Sinedu. And folks, I want to hear from you, crew, as we talk about this. The crazy part is the second part, which is what happened when the police did get to the scene. We'll talk a little bit about that and really delve a little bit deeper into this idea, as Sinedu said, of this level that white men can take agency over anybody, anytime, any place with no repercussions. Folks, stay with us. The discussion continues here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, you're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the horrific murder of a New York City man who was in a chokehold, put in a chokehold by another passenger on a subway station, the F train in New York City. And while this black man who was in the chokehold was screaming and yelling, arms flailing, crying out, saying that he initially wanted to die. He wanted to be sent to prison for life, that he did not have any food or any drink, and he was creating a public nuisance. A 24-year-old white man thought it was his place to put his arms around this black man's throat and squeeze, killing the black man on a train in front of people in broad daylight. Now, here's the thing. I've been talking to my brother Sinedu Okorafor as we talk about this, and I want to hear from you, crew. Police gets on the scene, brother Sinedu. Guess what? What always happens? They talk to the person involved. They talk to the 24-year-old. They question him for a little bit. Then they let him go. As of yesterday, according to the reports, law enforcement officials had not ruled the death a homicide or announced arrest. I'm sorry, as of Tuesday. They did not announce a homicide or arrest as of Tuesday. So nobody, I mean, blatant.
Farajii, where's the cameras? Where are the cameras?
They don't have cameras in New York City on the subway. I mean, this is, and it's getting so bad, brother. And I mean, I'm not trying to make light of this because it's insulting to the intelligence of any person of good conscience. Any person that justice can't even be rendered in a very absolute case. Like, what do you mean you don't know if he died? If you can say this is a homicide or not? Do you mean to tell me that you're going to come back with a coroner's report and you're going to say that man had a medical condition which led to his own demise?
Haven't we heard that before? Didn't they say? Didn't they say? Was it George Floyd or Michael Brown? I can't keep up. But didn't they say that they had some type of pre-existing?
Hey, brother, Sinead, they damn near say that about every victim. Remember now in New York, Eric Garner. That's when the conversation about I can't breathe. The reason that the New York City Police Department got into hot water with the death of Eric Garner is because of the use of the chokehold. So you mean to tell me? All right, let's go to the crew. Let's go to the crew, man. Janae checked in. You said, right, he got to go home alive last night. What the discrimination, lack of equality, equity, that part is infuriating. How about the lack of justice too, Janae? The lack of justice. There's no way in the world. Real Brooklyn. You say, so what would everyone say if the dude that choked him out was black? I'm very interested to know the answer. It doesn't matter. If the answer would be the same for me, Real Brooklyn. Answer would be the same for me. You can't go around killing people because you annoyed.
And I have an answer.
This is a terrible precedent.
Right.
Suppose this starts to become a trend on public transit across this country. Somebody gets on the transit, your music is too loud. Boom, I'm gonna kill you. Or I can't get a seat on a bus. Boom, I'm gonna kill you. I mean, come on. When does it, I mean, you know what I'm saying? I know people like, no, that's taking it too far, but Sinead isn't really taking it too far, considering that we're living in a time right now that the slightest infraction to someone's ego, the slightest sense of somebody feeling disrespected. We're living in a time where people get shot just for pulling up on the wrong driveway. And I'm not trying to be fear-mongering, but I'm just letting us know that the sanity of the person, they had a killing down in Texas. They just caught this joker. All his neighbors asked him to do was to stop shooting an automatic weapon at 11 o'clock at night because his baby was sleeping. That's all he asked them to do. A couple of minutes later, this dude walks up into a person's house and kills 5 people, including children. Come on, man. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Sandy, you said the Marine was a regular passenger. He got up from his seat and got involved to the extent he killed a man. That is premeditated. And he's a Marine that's supposed to be trained in handling conflict.
But watch them flip that Marine story and say, you know, maybe he's a man of war and da-da-da-da-da-da.
He got mental health issues and he's still devastated from the war. He's 24 years old.
And to real Brooklyn, if the gentleman who choked him was black, he'd be in jail.
He'd be in jail
for first-degree murder. So that's that.
He'd be in jail. Know what? You checked in and said murder is murder. But when it comes to black people dying, they always find an excuse. That's all I'm saying. Look. And this is not like selective outrage here, folks. This is not that. This is about, we're getting to a point now And I hate being in this mental space, Sinead, and you're a spiritual brother, and I'm a spiritual brother. I do not like to be in a space of fear. I just think that's counterintuitive for where Black people need to be in this country. That's counterintuitive for how I personally live my life, to be in a space of fear. But this is getting senseless, man. Like the violence against us is getting senseless. Now, I know that brother who died has a family. And so I'm waiting to hear from his family.
Yeah.
And it might be a situation like we saw with that joker down in who shot our little brother Earl. How the public pressure is going to force the police to do their damn job. You mean to tell me you won't even lock this man up and say, look, man, we're gonna have to take you off the street? Because now he has the possibility, he's not charged, he can leave the city.
Mm-hmm.
After he just killed a man in broad daylight on a subway station in the most populated city in the country.
And is anybody thinking about the mental health of those people who saw it?
Come on, brother.
Like, come on. Like it, and you know, Farajii, I've always said this, and this is not a gun case, but one thing I find very, very perplexing as a man with African in his background, you know, both my parents are Nigerian, but to Nigeria many, many, many times, and Nigeria is what America would classify as a third world country or as much as any African country. But you know what I realized? It's not a whole bunch of, for an underdeveloped country, it's not a whole bunch of gunfire. It's not a whole bunch, oh yeah, we know what's going on with some of the terrorism groups, but it's not a whole bunch of gunplay. But what I find interesting is when you see America coming and we tell people democracy, democracy. Democracy to do what? To become what? How is it that we are one of the most developed nations, quote unquote, in the world, but people still are carrying guns as if this was the early 1800s, late 1700s, when we didn't have a whole bunch of development? Aren't we supposed to get more developed, not only in society, but mentally, where we would need to have guns all the time, or we wouldn't need to have to, quote unquote, protect? What the fuck are we protecting ourselves from? I ask myself this all the time. What do people need all these damn guns for? What is this whole protection? Protection from what? What is this existential threat? I really want to know. Like, what is this? Because all of a sudden, no one's worrying about that protection when Proud Boys are marching through and when they're standing back and standing by. But when you see a Black body, what is this protection? When white men say that they're protecting themselves, what is it? What is this theology that they're protecting themselves? What do they view you and I as? Are we target practice? Are we animals? Are we less than men? We know that's what it said once upon a time in our Constitution. Has that not changed?
I mean, look, and I think we're coming to more and more to the reality, dear brother, where we're finding out exactly how America feels like about us. And even in all of these federal protections, even all the conversations about making progress and moving forward, it's such a hard place to be. It's like we're in the twilight zone in some cases, right? And it's almost in a schizophrenic situation. You have one reality where you do have this deep-seated hatred that has bubbled to the top and now is being expressed in the most violent and heinous and horrific way. But then you have another reality which is showing us, hey, we are moving forward. We are growing together. We're getting past some of the ills in the quote unquote the original sin of this country. And right in the middle of those two shifting or those two competing realities is Black America. That's where we are. We're right in there. And some of us are leaning one way and some of us are leaning the other way. But we're right there in the middle. We're being split on how we're seeing reality. So we can't talk about home of the free, land of the free, home of the brave. We can't talk about quote unquote democracy. And then you have an outright violation of the principle of justice right in front of us, and then nothing is done about it. And then to your point, what are we protecting? What are you asking us to vote for? What are you asking us for us to stand with? What are you asking for us to sacrifice for? Whose soul is really corrupted and in trouble? Look, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll have more conversation. with my brother Sinedu and you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. I want to take just a few more moments to talk about this situation in New York City of a black man who was choked out and choked to death by a white passenger on the F train in New York City. It was all recorded. It was a situation that led to police not making any arrests as of Tuesday. Today's Thursday. So there hasn't been any arrests made. They haven't said that the case is a homicide, even though on camera you can clearly see that the man died at the hands of another man. But then the other element of this, Brother Sinedu, was that along with people watching, a person recording, the man screaming, you have another man on camera holding his arms down. I don't know who that gentleman is, but that other person that's responsible, that person needs to be held accountable too. That person needs to be held accountable too, brother. And I'm making this point just that, it's so easy for us. And it's interesting, like yesterday we had this conversation about loneliness and how loneliness is the new epidemic according to the Surgeon General. And it's so easy for us to kind of like have tunnel vision when we're out in public spaces, right? Like, don't bother me. I don't bother you. I'm just walking to my situation. I'm going what I need to do. I'm sitting here. I'm only worried about what's happening literally in front of me and behind me. But I don't think that's a culture that we can adhere to anymore, brother. It's like we really do have to think that when we go into public spaces or when we're in public transit, whatever space where other people are, we do have to think, if something were to go down, how am I going to respond? Because it would be insane that I could sit there and watch this and not do anything. I mean, a part of your humanity would have to die with that brother. There's no way in the world I could just, not say anything, not do anything. Hey, get off of him. Get off of him. And if the Marine starts to get agitated, hey, so be it. But it's just, and I mean, and I'm saying this, crew, and y'all tell me, if we can't expect other people to have humanity or see us as humans if we don't see ourselves as human.
You know, Farajii, this is a very dark thought, but I believe if you could sit there and watch another human being die, then whether you know it or not, consciously or subconsciously, you believe that that human being deserves to die too.
Woo!
We have to have that karma because there's so much all of us could do to do something. Hey, stop. Hey, even, hey, the police are coming. That's it. That could have been enough to save that man's life. But somebody held him down. Was this planned? Onlookers. So you all sat, I've never understood, you all sat there and watched that human being lose his humanity. And we see it all the time with fights on airplanes and stuff like that. Everybody is more interested in being the first to capture the story than it is to do something about what they see. And that's a learned behavior. It's a taught behavior. If you see our media doing the same thing, what do you expect human beings to do? We ingest what we see. And maybe it's also so many people have died for so many heinous reasons that the feeling in us that cares is gone.
I mean,
it got to be something.
It got to be something. Hey, Deanna checked in. Deanna Michelle, you said this horrific event absolutely was tantamount to a lynching, plain and simple. Dang.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. Tiana, you checked in. My sister, good to hear from you. Thank you so much, Deanna. Tiana, you say people have lost their damn minds. I mean this. I'm wondering, Sinead, when we have conversations about mental health, it is interesting because this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. But does this require communities or churches or nonprofit organizations or social civic organizations to have conversations about how to handle people with mental health? We expect the police to know how to handle this. We expect other folks to know how to handle first responders. But it seems like now we may need that same type of training on a community level.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like what? Because something is, and like you mentioned, something is not connecting, bro.
You know, there was this video I had seen. You know, people do experiments all the time. There's a video I had seen on Instagram where it was this is a little experiment someone did. It was like a crowded, let's say, outdoor shopping venue, and it was a black child by herself. And the video zoomed out and showed people walking back and forth, just ignoring it. But then there was a white child placed there, same spot. And people stopped, came down to their level. Are you okay? And I say that to say, because I like when folks say it's not a racial thing. And I always tell people this. They didn't go anywhere to enslave white people and bring them here to work. They came here and they went and enslaved black people. It's been a racial thing, point blank, period. Okay. But the point of that video shows me and shows the viewer that there is something here. And I know Dr. Francis Cress Welsing talks about this idea of when you see something black, and that's a child, but the humanity that that person deserves as a human being, it disappears. You see it in drastic situations like this, but you also see it in the healthcare field where black women who are pregnant especially are not giving, they said they're not giving pain medicine at a higher rate because most of these doctors believe that we're impervious to pain. And this is a thought that came through from slavery because we survived. But again, it's this idea, do they even view us as humans?
And look, check this out. When I'm looking at the latest, and it does seem like the medical examiner, the victim name is Jordan Neely. He's the victim. That's the black man. He was he had suffered from mental health issues before, and they ruled the city medical examiner, and I'm getting this from the Daily News, that found the cause of his death to be compression of the neck. Compression of the neck. According to the investigation, the police said that they were awaiting the results of the autopsy before determining if criminal charges should be filed. You got to find them now.
Did they not see the video?
Brother, you got to find them now.
Did they not? And it's also a head start to create a backstory.
This happened on Monday. They got to find them. So I'm just looking at this situation, and I appreciate my crew for bringing it up. I thank y'all, crew. But and I think Storm Fluent 97, I saw that. So Storm Fluent 97, thank you for checking in and sharing that. That way we can do our due diligence. Compression of the neck. Bob Cosmic, you said it. Compression of the neck, ? George Floyd. We can go down the list, brother. George Floyd, Eric Garner. Who else? But you got to find them now. And I thought that, I thought that in the investigations that they do, and I may be wrong, that if there is enough evidence that they can still hold you while they
hold you for less. They hold you for less. They smell weed, don't see it, they hold you. But a human being,
whether it's yours or not.
Exactly.
I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this information, folks. And crew, if y'all find out any more details about this situation, please bring it to the chat. I would love to, bring it up. But we know it's strangulation. It's because of the chokehold. This should have been an open and closed case, bro.
Easy.
It should have been open and closed case. Easy. Like I said, the other person that's in the video should be charged too, though. They should figure it out. No charges yet. Of course, I'm just saying, once they find this 24-year-old, they got to find this other person, and they need to be charged too. Accessory to murder.
Absolutely.
Accessory to murder. So there is something happening, but we will have to keep our eyes open on this. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, as we talk about humanity, as we talk about justice, do you know today is the National Day of Prayer? Yeah, folks. My question is, does the country care? Are we a country that is that sees the power of prayer and can really, really appreciate it for what it can do to transform people and circumstances? We're going to have that conversation up next. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We want to switch gears as we have our next conversation, which is about prayer, as today is the National Day of Prayer. And this day is generally observed on the first Thursday in the month of May in the United States. And this is a day where we look at the power, the exercise of prayer to determine how we can use that power, to use that exercise to move the country forward in a much better way. I've been talking to my brother Sinedu Wakofor, and folks, I've been talking to you as we're looking at this National Day of Prayer. I mean, I think, Sinedu, we can all agree, bro, the country needs some prayer. The country needs some prayer. We're seeing more and more incidents of horrific violence against people who didn't deserve it, unjustified homicides like what we just saw with the case of Jordan Neely. I mean, people are losing their sense of reality. And I know one of the things that prayer has done for me personally, it has centered me. It has brought me back into an understanding of who I am, and as they say, whose I am, because I have no power. I have no power to change some of these circumstances. But the one who prays, the one who seeks that, who seeks relief from all of this madness that is going on around us, he has all the power. But this National Day of Prayer is something that faith leaders from across the country are, emphasizing that people need to take in part of. My question is, though, Brother Sinedu, does the country even care? President Biden put out a proclamation today where he said that on this National Day of Prayer, we recognize the profound power of prayer grounded in deep humility and hope. Deep humility and hope in America. Whew. That's a mighty work you're gonna have to do there. A lot of people aren't hopeful right now, bro. I don't think a lot of people feeling very hopeful. And it's not just black people. I think white people feel the same way. I think Latinos and Hispanic people feel the same way. Anybody that is in this country, I really don't think they're as hopeful, and I know there have been a number of studies about, how confident we are, how hopeful are we about the future of this country, about the times that we're living in. A lot of people aren't hopeful, bro. How did we get there? How did we get to a place of deep humility and hope at this point, bro, from your vantage point?
Well, I would say I don't think we were ever there, at least not in the last couple of 100 years. And I'll tell you why I say that. There's always this proclamation that America was founded on the idea of religious freedom and this deep religious freedom. But while you were seeking God, you were killing people. You were doing things against the God that you claim you pray to. So it's just reminiscent of my college days when I get too drunk and I say, God, please, if you make me better, I'll never drink again. And I'm drunk the next weekend.
Right.
That's what I feel like. And I think we can't use prayer as an elixir or as some type of reset button to our humanity if we're not actually fundamentally asking for help and then stepping into the position of being helped, doing things differently than we did before. But I think folks, God help me, or however you pray, faith without works. And all of a sudden it's a reset. And everybody just says prayer, 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 prayer. We pray before we go to war. We pray. And it's such a oxymoron, juxtaposed. I think what we really need is a come to humanity. I believe prayer is very important. And while you're praying, before you're praying, and after you're praying, don't forget to have a come to humanity moment. Not a come to Jesus, a come to humanity where I, your brother, or she, your sister, that we are all standing in the need of prayer, as they say in the church, and we are all human. We are all on this experiment called life, trying to figure things out. and we all are going to get it wrong consistently. Grace.
I agree.
I think grace is important more than hope. I think hope is a pipe dream, but grace is something you can easily give just by saying, you know what, Farajii, I've made mistakes too. So I can understand that you made a mistake as well. Simple things that we could do that don't take a whole bunch of sweat equity, but we avoid them. But we can run to a prayer because we feel like that, that exonerates us from the sins that we already know that we're going to commit after that prayer.
Well, I think you speak to it, and Pauline checked in. Pauline Hurt, you said the same thing. Prayer without works is dead. And I think that we have been so conditioned to believe that if we just pray, that if we just speak to the Creator as to what we want to have or what we want to have changed in our life or anything like that, and then walk away from that moment, that it should automatically come into fruition. We're not conditioned to believe that, even though that's what the scriptures say, prayer without works is dead. We're not conditioned to truly believe that we have to, when we pray, we're asking the Creator to give us the power to bring our prayer into existence, just as much as we're asking Him for His intervention in our affairs. So it's a exchange between the believer and the Creator, the believer in God. So you're being empowered while asking for His power. But that requires then for us to be in a state of mind where we go to work to make our prayer a reality. And I think, unfortunately, and I mean, y'all tell me if this is a bad analogy, Brother Nadir and crew, I think a lot of us go to prayer like we go to the ballot box. We go to prayer asking for something, expecting the change, and walk away from that moment, walk away from that ballot box, and not putting in no work to make that change a reality. We'll cast our ballot, I voted, but then waiting on some mystery God to change our circumstances.
I'm so glad that's a great analogy, because I feel like when you look at the balance of life, it's like a teeter-totter. We go to pray, and then the teeter-totter goes down this way. But then we forget that in order to make that prayer move, we have to do something else. And you're right, it's a ballot. I'm expecting someone or something. And that's very interesting that was a beautiful analogy, because, you're putting it in the hands of someone or something.
Right.
When it's all in your hands, you do the something, and that all-powerful being will move you into that something, will protect you into that something, will bring those around you who are there to assist you through that something. But it's like, you're right. It's we cast that ballot, get upset, and then say, well, they were supposed to. You're not answering my prayer. Are we doing the work? Are we answering ourselves?
Right. And my brother, my pastor, Pastor Damon, he said, Brother Farajii, faith without works is dead. You're right. Pauline said it, prayer without works, but it is faith. Faith without works. You have to exercise your faith. If you want to see, let's go with another analogy. Your faith is like a muscle. You just like you go to the gym and you work out that muscle to get stronger. You got to put your faith to work to get stronger. Otherwise, your faith is going to lay dormant, and it's never going to render you any benefit. And so, we're in a time like this, folks, that it requires us to be active. Whether you're talking about your faith, whether you're talking about your prayer, they both require some level of active participation for us to get out of a place of comfort to get into a place of discomfort. And I think that's and brother, that's why I asked this question. Does the country care? We don't really care. Prayer doesn't really, I know this might sound blasphemous to some, but people don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't care You can't say, well, this is a society that honors prayer. We say prayer didn't go to war. And stance that I'm taking, I'm just looking at how the culture is. You know what I'm saying? And so, I mean, I'm all good for prayer. You know what I mean? And I think it's a powerful, powerful tool and a great thing to do because it purifies the human soul and spirit. But if you can't even come to the rug, like for Muslims, you come to the rug. For Christians, you come to a moment of solace and peace. If you can't come into that space, acknowledging your own humanness or your lack thereof, right? And saying to the Creator, look, I need some help. I need you to help me out here. That's the problem. Some of us don't tend to believe that we have issues on a very soul level. And I think we do. I think we all are affected. You know what I'm saying? We all are affected by the madness of this world. That we all, oh no, I'm good. I don't need no prayer. I don't need that. I don't need it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, and just Farajii, I know we're coming to an end of this segment, but like we also misconstrue what we're praying to and why we're praying. Remember, those ships that came to America with slaves on them had religious names. Let's not forget that the what are they called? The nuclear missiles were called peacekeepers. We do these strange, incongruous juxtaposition to religion, prayer, ideology, faith, into man's evil, into our evil. And we find ways to justify. God told me to do it. We find ways to justify, and we seek everything but the truth. And sometimes the truth is that we do not carry everything to God in prayer. We falter on our friends, or we lean on the society of television and social media. And it's really about releasing of self and saying, God, I really want you to do what you do. That's what I believe prayer is. And that's why in every religion, mostly every religion, almost all of them, everybody prostrates one way or another, because it is a sign of my body is unworthy. Yep. Please come upon to me.
Yep.
But then we get up and turn right back into man.
Absolutely. Jeanette, you checked in as we close out. Jeanette Hawes, you said, Farajii, prayer is so much more powerful than your description. Powerful when one who faith in the creators having given us the power to decree and to declare in prayer. I think we're saying the same thing, Sister Jeanette. I think we're saying the same thing. I mean, I can talk extemporaneously about the power of prayer. But you're right. You are absolutely right. Deanna Michelle, you said we can pray, yes, but we can also vote. This country is run by too many racists and bigots who are allowing hatred to reign by their actions, words, and the laws that are being enacted. Right. Janelle, you checked in and said National Days of Prayer means zip if the U.S. doesn't address systemic racism, poverty, the denial of health care, and ecological devastation, militarism, militarianism, and destructive religious nationalism. Quoting Reverend William Barber. Yes, one of our great pastors. You absolutely is right. Chris, you said if you have to say it might sound blasphemous, it is blasphemous. The Lord your God said he will either destroy you or uplift you. See, we're going into a situation with words. Let me just tell y'all, keep it real. Very quickly. It's not y'all, Chris, you're going back and forth with words. I'm just saying to some that I don't want y'all to be offended. But some people do not care about God. They don't have God in their heart and their spirit. We can't say that all Americans are good Americans when people are acting the way they're acting. We can't say that this is a God-loving country when we see the types of things that are happening that are in direct opposition to what God said he loved in the Bible or the Holy Quran or whatever text you use. So I'm saying let's bring some reality into the conversation, that if you want to talk about a national day of prayer, then there has to be an acknowledgement to some people. And we're also dealing in a time where some people don't even believe there is a God or there is a a force greater than themselves or creator, however the term you want to use. So we can't get on our soapbox, and none of us, even myself, can't get on the soapbox without acknowledging that you got all of these different factions happening. Brother Sinedu, my brother, I appreciate you. I love you, and I thank you so much for joining us in the conversation. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and God willing, we'll return to you sometime next week.
All right, inshallah. Thank you, brother. Love you too.
Love you too, bro. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's have the conversation about the Proud Boys being convicted. I'm going to check in with my brother Michael Imhotep of the African History Network, and of course with you. Stay with us. The conversation continues on the culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I truly, truly appreciate you for tuning in and joining the conversations. Let me tell you, the conversations stay hot with the culture crew as we try to stream it right now on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you join us in the conversation as the culture crew are always getting it in, taking the discussion to the next level, and more importantly, sharing their thoughts so we can share your thoughts with their thoughts with you, so that way we can all be involved in this discussion about the culture. And of course, make sure y'all continue to do y'all due diligence and support Black Star Network as we continue to do the great work of making sure that we're continuing to have these conversations about us and about the rest of the world. So go to blackstarnetwork.com and support us today. All right, folks, I wanted to switch gears and have another conversation, which is about, as much as we talk about all of these other things, there might be some semblance of justice happening with the latest conviction coming from the latest conviction of the Proud Boys. You know what that group is. That's the group that have shown their great support for former President Donald Trump, and one of the white supremacist groups that showed up on January the 6th, and in some cases led the insurrection, that the storming of the Capitol. Well, 4 members of that group, the Proud Boys, been found guilty of seditious conspiracy by a jury in D.C. for their role to forcibly prevent the peaceful transfer of power from then President Donald Trump to Joe Biden after the 2020 election. According to the reports, folks, those 4 individuals, take a look at this. Take a look. Here are the 4 individuals that were convicted. Defendants Enrico Tarrio, who serves as the Proud Boys' longtime chairman, Ethan Nordine, Joseph Biggs, Zachary Rell, and Dominic Pizzola, they faced a range of charges, including 3 separate conspiracy charges, obstructing the electoral vote, and tampering with evidence. Now, the guilty verdict marks the 3rd time that prosecutors have secured convictions for seditious conspiracy in the Justice Department's historic prosecution of those who breached the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Here to talk to us about the implications of what this all means and how will it affect things moving forward, especially given the fact that former President Donald Trump is running again for office. Does that mean that these groups like the Proud Boys will be empowered, emboldened to make sure that this happens, or that there will be more violence, or there might be some more political violence against the United States government? We will have to see. Let me bring in my brother, who is going to join us for this part of the conversation, Brother Michael Imhotep. You see him on Roland Martin Unfiltered, but you also see him and can hear him on his show, the African History Network show that he has in Detroit, as well as online. And we are always happy to have my brother joining us. Brother Michael, good afternoon. Good to talk to you again, bro. How you feeling?
Hey, Farajii, I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You wanted to talk about this. What's the big part of this story? Because there have been a number of arrests relating to January the 6th. But what is it about this?
Close to 1,000 arrests related to January 6th. Yeah.
Right. Right. And I think that, and I'm bringing that up because, one, a lot of people don't believe that there was some sort of punishment. We hear that we, of course, we saw what happened, but then we don't always know, well, what's going on with that? And you're absolutely right. Close to 1,000 arrests have been made. But why did this story, why did the conviction of the Proud Boys stick out? What stuck out the most for you for this?
Well, it is taking place right now because the jury is still deliberating on 11 of the remaining counts. So this is a continuation. We know Oath Keepers were convicted of seditious conspiracy. Here you have 4 out of the 5 Proud Boys convicted. And then also you had, they were convicted on 31 of 46 counts as well. So we're continuing to see the Department of Justice go after these people, not hold press conferences every day, but really speak speak in court. You've had over close to 1,000 or more people arrested. Actually, it's more than 1,000 people arrested. You've had I can't remember how many convictions, somewhere around 500 convictions or so. You've had guilty pleas. So all this is taking place right now, and there is accountability that's happening. And the Proud Boys are looked at as like enforcers of Donald Trump. Okay, they're looked at it as enforcers of Trump, and they're being held accountable as well. So what people, and now it's with Enrique Tarrio, who's the former chairman of the Proud Boys. He was convicted on seditious conspiracy as well, and he wasn't even there on January 6th. Okay, so now, because like when you read the article from the Washington Post today, Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, 3 others guilty of January 6th seditious conspiracy. So a lot of legal analysts are thinking that this gives special counsel Jack Smith an opportunity, gives him more footing, more leeway to go after Donald Trump, who was not at the Capitol on January 6th. But the allegations are that Trump incited these insurrectionists and sent them to the U.S. Capitol. He was at the White House watching it after the rally that they had at the White House. He was at the White House watching it and did nothing for 187 minutes. So it's always good when you see domestic terrorists held accountable, number one. And we need to pay attention to this. But also, if our vote didn't matter, why did they work so hard to try to invalidate 16.9 million African Americans' votes? Why did they were sent there to stop a constitutionally mandated bicameral, means both chambers of the legislative branch, the House and the Senate, a bicameral session of the legislative branch of the government to certify the 2020 presidential elections, to certify those electoral college votes. So if our vote didn't matter, why did they try to overthrow the government to keep Trump in office and then validate the votes of 16.9 million African Americans? So this is why understanding history, law, and politics and economics is so important. Okay, so we need to pay close attention to this and other investigations and trials that are taking place as well.
Let me ask you this, Brother Michael, before we take our next pause. Do you think that with these convictions, with these arrests, that it really puts a dent in the white supremacist, white nationalist groups from growing, from emerging? Like I said, President Trump, he talking about he planning to run again. So these
well, he is running again. He is running.
I mean, he's running again. So these groups are still in existence. Do you think
Sure.
that all of this stuff is still is it putting a dent on that movement?
I think what it's doing is showing that if you go out here and do this, we're going to find you. We're going to keep in mind, most of them were not arrested on January 6th. They were arrested afterward. The FBI hunted them down. You're going to be brought to justice. You're going to be prosecuted. Okay, you're going to lose your job. You may lose your house. You're going to be convicted. You're going to go to prison. You're going to get felonies. They're convicting them on. So when you go and look at these various convictions, people are convicted. One of the convictions today was on theft of government property. Okay, so it's now if you go look when Trump was indicted. Okay. When Trump was indicted on charges out of Manhattan, okay, Allen Bragg, District Attorney Allen Bragg, Trump was calling for his supporters to come out and protest. All right, there weren't a whole lot of protests. It was nothing like January 6th to come out and protest and support him. Okay, so even though you have like 63%, there's a poll that just came out. 63% of Republicans think that Joe Biden wasn't. Let me see. 63% believe. 63% of Republicans polled still believe that Biden did not legitimately win the 2020 election. 63%. Well, the number one news source for Republicans is Fox News. That's the number one news source, and Republicans are less likely to get their news from a variety of news sources, where Democrats are much more likely to get their news from, NBC, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, a variety of news sources. So when you have not the huge support that people thought were going to come out and support Donald Trump when he got indicted, what's taking place with those insurrectionists being prosecuted, being sentenced to prison, getting felony convictions, okay, losing their jobs, losing their homes, reputation ruined in many cases, that's a sign to them your white supremacy is not your superpower. You thought it was, but you're going to be held accountable.
Then we're going to take a pause right there, because when we come forward, Brother Michael, I think that is going to be the gaslight that will enrage some of these groups, because of the history and the origin of what these groups originally stood for, which is not necessarily against Black people. I mean, that was a part of the ideology. But from my understanding of like white militias, they have a problem with the United States government. They have a problem with the political structure and the system that we are in. So I think this is going to be very, very interesting. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more with my brother Michael and Hotep. I would love to hear from you, crew. What are your thoughts about this? As Proud Boys are being convicted, this is just another group of white militia, white nationalists who have supported Trump, who have gone through the criminal justice system, and now a conviction has been rendered. And as a result of that, do you think this is going to change the dynamic of hate and the dynamic of insurrection in this country? Join us in the conversation right now as we're streaming on YouTube and Facebook, and stay with us It's the culture here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the conviction of the white supremacist group, the Proud Boys, and they have some of their leader and 4 of their members were convicted of seditious conspiracy, a charge that has been rendered with other groups involved in the January 6th storming of the Capitol. And we've been talking about this subject with my brother Michael Imhotep, who's given us his analysis and, more importantly, helping us to connect the dots on how we should see this conviction, this latest set of convictions for those who are involved in January 6th, and keeping that in mind for moving forward. Folks, I want you to join me in the conversation. I want to get your take on this, crew. Do you think that this situation here, what we're seeing with the Proud Boys and other folks who have been arrested, who have been convicted, do you think that this is going to create an even more emboldened stance for these groups who have a beef with the government? Not just about with Black people and all of those things, but they do have an ideological beef with the government. Do you think that this is going to open up their ranks, add to their ranks, or do you think that this is going to be like a way to finally shut down on these militias? Brother Michael, you was making a point that, when we saw Trump being indicted in that Manhattan court, even though the media wanted to play it up as if, and I'm talking about some of the larger mainstream media wanted to play it up as if there was going to be just as many people storming the Manhattan court as we saw on the Capitol. That wasn't the case. That wasn't the case.
Well,
so do you feel like these folks, that these guys who are part of these militias and part of these groups, they are finally getting the message that, man, I mean, we could talk about white supremacy all day, but this government is going to bring the hammer down on us. Our lives will be destroyed. And I'm asking that, brother, because I remember watching one of the January 6th hearings, and I don't know this guy's name, but he was a former member.
Right.
Of I think he was a Proud Boy or something, or Oath Keeper. And he went up there looking like a child. Man, I lost my house, my job. I was crazy to even believe in Trump. And I remember this thinking to myself, cry me a river, bro. There was no way in the world. You tell me that you didn't think that on that day, on January the 6th, when all of you and your homeboys was like, come on, we're going to get it up in the Capitol. Oh, by the time you get up there, you see all the madness and chaos at the Capitol. You didn't think, you know what? I need to walk away from this because this might bite me in the ass in the next couple of days.
Well, the person that you're talking about, he talked about how he bought into the whole ideology of the Proud Boys. Things like this. It's important for people to understand. These white supremacist organizations prey on people who are ignorant. They prey on people who don't understand history. They prey on people who really don't understand law. They prey on people who never read and don't understand the U.S. Constitution. So, for instance, you have numerous footage of people there January 6th, and they're telling the police that we were invited here by the president of the United States, referring to Donald Trump. Okay.
Right.
Well, first of all, the U.S. Capitol is part of the legislative branch of the federal government. The president does not control the U.S. Capitol building, the House and the Senate. The president does not control the U.S. Capitol building. The White House is part of the executive branch of the federal government. The president controls the White House. The president of the United States cannot invite you to the U.S. Capitol building, just like the Speaker of the House of Representatives just can't up and invite you to the White House. Okay,
Michael, I gotta laugh, bro, because it makes absolute sense what you're talking about. It's just the fact that somebody would have go up in there and said, the president told us to meet him here.
Right. And Secret Service would not let Trump go to the U.S. Capitol because it was too dangerous. So he sits and watches the festivities at the White House. Now, something is important to understand. So we have three branches of the federal government: legislative branch, executive, and judicial branch. When the president holds his or her State of the Union address, typically the president will hold it in the chamber of the House of Representatives. Okay. The president has to get permission from the Speaker of the House of Representatives to hold the State of the Union address inside the House chamber, because the president does not control the House chamber. The Speaker of the House of Representatives controls it. Okay. So when Donald Trump gave his one of his State of the Union addresses in the House chamber, he had to get permission from Nancy Pelosi.
Right.
Okay. So this is why understanding the U.S. Constitution is so important. If a lot of those idiots, now you have some people, all they did was just trespass, which is a misdemeanor. They didn't destroy property. They weren't some of the domestic terrorists that assaulted 140 police officers. They didn't steal government property, anything like that. They were just dumb and just trespassed. Okay. If they read and understand the U.S. Constitution, it would have saved them a lot of trouble and they wouldn't have to deal with legal charges. All right. And then also, just for the sake of accuracy, I posted an article here from CNBC.com. Hopefully you could bring it up on the screen. This is from March 23rd, updated March 23rd, 2023. DOJ says at least 1,000 Trump supporters arrested for January 6th Capitol riot. And in the article, because I said you've had over 1,000 arrested. In the article, about 518 people have pleaded guilty to federal crimes so far, the DOJ said in an update marking 26 months since the riot. So what happens is bad news travels fast. And when these domestic terrorists are pleading guilty, they're getting felonies, they're going to prison, they're losing their rights, things like this. Bad news travels fast in the white supremacist network. So even though it may not change how they think, for a lot of them, it would change how they act, because they see accountability. They see, oh, they're going to come after me. I may walk away, but they're going to show up at my doorstep. They're going to arrest me. I'm going to lose my job, lose my family, lose my house, etc.
This is
lose my freedom, possibly.
Oh, absolutely. Let me go to the crew, because folks are checking in on and talking about this. Official Sanika, you said Farajii. Huh? Can you hear me? Okay. We're gonna get his sound together. Official Sanika, you said, I pray that Black people wake up and realize that no amount of legislation will prevent people from disrespecting Black folks' humanity. Official Sanika, I pray the same thing too. Thank you so much for checking in. Lori, you said, didn't Trump say at all of his rallies that he loved the uneducated and ignorant? That's good. That's an interesting one right there. I don't know. And I'm gonna ask my brother Michael, did Trump say that? Let's bring Brother Michael back into the frame here. Brother Michael, we're working on getting his sound. All right. We're working on getting his sound. That's an interesting one, Lori. I have not heard that one. So that would be very interesting. But it not only would be interesting, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. Look, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's continue to have the conversation as we talk about the latest update around the issue of reparations and how the California Reparations Task Force has made another move trying to bring closer Black folks to reparations in the state of California. Stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20036-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We have one more conversation that we wanted to bring you up to date on. And this is a conversation about reparations and how the state of California, the Reparations Task Force, may be moving one step closer to having some of the Black residents of California to receive some sort of financial payout. As of right now, it looks like the state of California might be on the precipice of making history. Now, according to the latest coming from the reparations task force that was established back in 2020. This, first and foremost, this task force is the first and only task force in the rest of compared to the rest of the country. But more importantly, this task force is looking forward to having the conversation about how much should Black residents of California should receive. Well, take a look at this. This is coming from KTLA here in Los Angeles. The California Reparations Task Force, they've released estimates as well as breakdowns of the methodology used to determine the amounts, and this was done on Monday ahead of a critical vote that will take place later this week. Now, according to what the task force has put out there as being how they want to move forward on this whole situation, I want to share this with you. Keen, if we can post this, thank you. The California Reparations Task Force, they are talking about, I'm looking at the second paragraph here, folks. It says the possible payments reflect the work of economists who advised the task force and who were asked to estimate the total financial losses suffered by Black Californians impacted by slavery and institutional racism. As outlined by the San Francisco Chronicle, an eligible resident who lived in California their whole life and was 71 or older could, in theory, receive as much as $1.2 million. If approved, the task force would urge that the money begin to be dispersed in the form of, quote, down payments, according to Cal Matters. A new state agency would need to establish to distribute funds and determine eligibility, according to Cal Matters. That agency would also help Black Californians trace their lineage to confirm that they are eligible for the payments. I want to bring my brother Michael and Hotep back into the conversation around this issue of reparations. Brother Michael, for the task force to lay out this methodology, to lay out, these requirements, what do you say?
Well, they're progressing along. They by July 2023, they have to present their second and final report that makes the recommendations. The interim report came out June 1st, 2022. It's 500 pages. I've read the 28-page executive summary. I'm working my way through the full 500-page report. So they're continuing the task. They were charged with coming up with a methodology to determine the amount for reparations. They weren't charged with putting a dollar amount on it. That's what the state assembly, that's what the state legislature in California would do. The the California Reparations Task Force was charged with coming up with the methodology. So they consulted with economists who have done that. Now, once again, as we talked about before here on the show, in the 28-page executive summary, they outline 12 harms. Okay, they outline 12 harms that African Americans have suffered nationwide, but also there in the state of California. They talk about enslavement, even though they've identified about 1,500 people who were in a semi-slavery state in California. When California comes into the Union in 1850, they come into the Union as a free state. They talk about racial terror, political disenfranchisement, housing segregation, separate and unequal education, racism in environment and infrastructure, like the expressways coming through California, as well as through San Francisco, especially wiping out African-American communities and businesses, pathologizing the Black family, control over creative, cultural, and intellectual life, stolen labor and hindered opportunity, an unjust legal system, mental and physical harm and neglect. And the 12th one is the racial wealth gap, So they're continuing in their charge, what they're supposed to do. So what I think is important for us to do is, one, read the first report, especially 28 page executive summary. Two, one of the things that they talked about in the article from KTLA is the California Reparations Task Force is also recommending that a state agency like the Freedmen's Bureau be created to help African Americans. It would need to be established to distribute funds and to determine eligibility, but also help African Americans in California trace their lineage to confirm that they are eligible for the payments. So once again, based upon California state law, race-based policies are illegal. So this is why I think it was 2022, they voted to make any type of benefits that are distributed based upon lineage. You'd have to prove your lineage that you were descended from someone who was enslaved prior to 1900 or of African descent who arrived in the country prior to 1900. And what they're trying to do is legally get around the restriction on race-based policies in the state of California. So whatever benefits are passed in the state legislature and signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom won't get overturned in court when Republicans file lawsuits, because lawsuits are coming. I'm telling you right now, if Republicans file lawsuits to block the debt forgiveness on student loans, the executive order that President Joe Biden did, and that's going to help millions of white people, they're coming after this.
So knowing that, Brother Michael, do you feel like the California Reparations Task Force is prepared? Because, I mean, one is, what's the timeline? Like you mentioned, June of this year.
July 2023, yeah.
Right, July of this year. Mm-hmm. They're going to be presenting their final report.
Right.
So and let's not gloss over the fact that there are still groups out there who have been working within this reparation space who don't even agree with the task force's methodology, the establishment of a California Reparations Task Force, to even go this far into the conversation. So how do we, bring some sort of reconciliation with that situation? You got folks on one side are like, oh man, this is great. And then the other folks are like, this is not enough. This is done wrong. This is not what the reparations movement needs to look like. This needs to be a more federal conversation and not a statewide conversation. So I know that there's some level of infighting that's happening there.
So unfortunately, when a lot of these conversations take place, one, people don't want to deal with reality. Two, people don't want to deal with finances, deal with the budget. The annual budget of the state of California is $300 billion. Okay. So a month ago, when one estimate came out that reparations could total $800 billion. Okay. And that did not include the theft of land. Now that's a calculation, but I would argue that that's 2.5 times the annual budget of the state of California, which probably is not realistic.
Right.
So there's a difference between what is just due and what you can calculate on paper and what can actually be paid by the state of California. This is not the federal government, this is the state of California. Okay. Just like there's a difference between what somebody personally may owe and what they can actually earn and pay in a month or a year. Okay. Right. So yeah, you may owe this debt, but this is all I make. Okay. So deal with it.
You can't, right. I want to stop you right there because I got to take another pause.
All right.
And that's a great point. That's a great point. Folks, when we come forward, we will continue the conversation talking about the latest developments in the reparation movement for the state of California and how that affects the rest of the country. Join us in the conversation and stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking about the reparations movement as the California Reparations Task Force is moving further along, taking another step forward to ensuring that Black residents of California get some sort of financial payment. Now, as of right now, the estimate looks like being around $1.2 million for eligible Black residents of California. And those eligible residents would have to adhere to the metric or to the requirements of living in California their whole life, being 71 or older, and that those who would be eligible would have to go through the process of making sure that they are in fact eligible by confirming their lineage for the state of California. And there's a couple of other requirements that Black residents would have to take in order to become eligible for that $1.2 million. The other part about that is that the task force is urging that the money begin to be dispersed in the form of down payments, and that a new state agency would be created to distribute funds and to determine eligibility. Now, we've been talking to my brother Michael and Hotep, about this situation. And Brother Michael, you were making the point that if the state of California only brings in a certain amount of money, $300 billion for the state of California, we can expect to ask for more than that, 2.5 times more than that, as you say, for reparations. So the 1.2 million, does that sound more reasonable for residents that are older than 71 here in the state of California?
Well, number one, I'm not sure how many people are going to qualify for that. We'll have to see how many people qualify for that. Two, are the 1.2 million, is it going to be in installments or is it going to be in a lump sum? I'm not sure.
I mean, they said down payments.
So it could be in installments.
Right.
That is only one part of the compensation. That's only one part of the restitution, the cash payments. So a lot of this more will come out when their final report comes out. I know when we looked at San Francisco, for instance, in San Francisco, so like statewide in California, African Americans are like 6% of the population, right around that. Same as San Francisco. Okay, so we'll have to get more details on this. But I wanted to address what you were saying, where you have some groups that say we need to deal with federal legislation as opposed to state. We need to do both. Wherever we are in power, we need to push to repair the damage that government did. This is designed chiefly to repair the damage that the state of California government did, not necessarily the federal government. Okay, we need to deal with the federal government, but the largest effort to deal with the federal government so far has been to get a study done, HR 40. Okay, no disrespect to the Honorable John Conyers from Detroit, where I live, who represented Detroit, and no disrespect to Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas. But if you can't get a study done after 50 years, you can't get that legislation passed in the House and is dead on arrival in the Senate, how do you get a bill passed to pay reparations, to distribute reparations? So my argument is, take the 500-page study that the California Reparations Task Force has done, take the policy recommendations, that they're making or modifications of the policy recommendations and make that at the federal level and pass and push to get those bills, those laws put into effect. And also, as we talked about before, take the title reparations off of it. The reason why is because African Americans are about 14% of the population. Reparations nationally, okay, outside of the African American community, reparations is not popular. So why would you put a term on what you want that does not poll well with the majority of the people who got to vote for this stuff and the majority of the country? Take the policies off, take the title reparations off, push the policies that you want, and then third, the most important thing, explain how these policies don't just help African Americans, but also help the majority population, which many of them do, because what's good for African Americans are good for America in general. The majority of the people that got to vote on these policies in the House and the Senate are white. And for some reason, that's something that people still haven't figured out. So understanding a business relationship, what's in it for me, you need to explain to them how voting for these policies also helps them and their constituents.
Great points. Great points.
Because you need 60 votes in the Senate.
Right, right.
Okay. There are 51 Democrats in the Senate. Means you need 9 Republicans. No Republicans support reparations. No. Not in the House or in the Senate, not even the black ones. So the way this has to be marketed, it has to be better. Number one. Number two, and people mean well. I understand this. People mean well, sacrifice their lives, things like this. But the way this has to be marketed has to be better. Number one. Number two, our purpose for voting has to be better explained. Stop telling African Americans to vote for exercise. If you want to exercise, you go to the gym and work out. You vote for power. You vote for power acquisition to be able to put people in place to get policies passed that are beneficial to you, your family, and your people. What's good for African Americans is good for America. Politics is the legal distribution that scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Okay? Once you change what the purpose is, the end result, then you understand that you have to lay out a strategy that puts you on the road to accomplish the end result. But if you're told that you vote for exercise, you vote because of Dr. King and Fannie Lou Hamer, even though we need to study their history. No, you vote for the present and the future with the understanding of the past, and we stand on their shoulders. But you have to vote for, see, politics impacts every aspect of our lives, from the water we drink to the air we breathe to the food we eat. Everything deals with politics. So you have to vote for policies that are beneficial to us, as opposed to symbolism, talking about voting to exercise your right to vote. No.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking at this piece, and I'm going to get to a couple of crew members before we close out today. But USA Today just put this piece out, Brother Michael, saying that the California Task Force is set to vote on plan for reparations this weekend. They are planning to host their next meeting this weekend, and it's supposed to be set this Saturday at Mills College in Oakland, California.
Right. Yeah, they've been doing a lot of. Go ahead.
Mills College in Oakland, California is where the next meeting for the Reparations Task Force for California will be held at. That will be this Saturday, and they are putting together, as Brother Michael has been talking about, they're putting together their final recommendations to be submitted by June 30th to the California State Legislature.
Right.
So we're talking about a very short period of time. This is already May, the beginning of May.
This has been a 2-year process, basically a 2-year
process. They're trying to bring it all together.
Right.
And you know, this is going to, if it goes through, and this is you know, you always talking about politics and history and understanding the legal system.
Right.
Gavin Newsom is a contender, or has been talked about, for running for president of the United States.
Well, he's not going to run against Joe Biden. That's not happening. He ain't running against Joe Biden.
He probably won't run against Joe Biden.
But in the future, in the future,
he might be, right.
Yeah.
But the fact is that if he decides, if the legislature decides, I mean, this is going to be historic in a very big way.
Right.
Not only just in talking about getting reparations, the cash payout, but you're talking about setting up an infrastructure, a model that other states can start to use, where
Correct.
you might have task force in Detroit and in Michigan and Maryland and other places.
Right. Well, there's a reparations task force here in Detroit, but yeah, statewide, yeah, this will set the model. This will set a precedent.
That's all. Yeah.
And for the federal level as well. Yes.
And for the federal level.
Absolutely.
And for the federal level, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and I was telling a sister I know that because in a lot of cases, because we were talking about this, that a lot of this does have to happen on a state level in order for the president or for Congress to really take it seriously on a federal level, because it's coming out of their budget. It's not coming out of the federal budget. It would have to come, the way the conversation is shaping up, it looks like it's going to be coming out of these state budgets rather than the federal budget.
Right, right. And not only that, it will set a precedence, it will set a model that then can be used at the federal level. So first of all, shout out to Camila Moore, attorney Camila Moore, who's the chairwoman of the California Reparations Task Force. I think she's been doing a fantastic job. I've been following this for 2 years, as well as shout out to everybody who serves on the task force, okay, because this is a lot of work. And I think it's really important for us to have realistic expectations of what can come from this as well. Just because you don't get every single thing that you want does not mean what you get is insignificant also. But yeah, we have to push for this. But this is why voting is so important. Okay, you wouldn't get here if you didn't vote the right people into office in the state legislature. And if you did not vote Governor Gavin Newsom as governor, because he's the one who signed off on this legislation that created this task force. That was a bill that came from the California State Assembly. He was the governor who signed off on it. Now, if Larry Elder had become governor of California, Larry Elder would not condone this. He would reject any recommendations that come from it. He would not have signed off on the bill that created the task force.
Right.
So we have to understand this, and really, it ain't about political parties, about whose policies are most beneficial for African Americans, whose policies are most realistic, whose policies would do the least amount of harm, who can create an environment for us to push our agenda the farthest to get the most accomplished, and who will protect gains that have already been made. That's what it's about. So Don't compare. So I'm neither Democrat nor Republican. I'm definitely not stupid. Don't compare Democrats to perfection. Don't compare them to the almighty. Compare them to the alternative. The alternative are Republicans.
There it is. Brother Michael and Hotep, always a pleasure to have you. Brother, very quickly, let's talk about the work you're doing with the African History Network.
Yeah, so I teach online history classes, among other things. Online history classes Saturdays and Sundays. This Saturday and Sunday, we're offering free class sessions. Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade. It's a 12-week online class that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history, what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. All the sessions we do live, but they're archived and recorded. You can go back and watch them a year from now, 2 years from now. And then Sunday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I teach another class, Black Resistance Movements, from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement. We look at history chronologically from 1800 to 1968 to understand the laws and policies put in place that brought us to where we are today, to understand where we need to go from here. And you'll learn political self-defense and psychological self-defense as well, understanding our history and culture. So visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, and you can use both of these classes with your children as well. I would say the content is PG-13.
That's awesome. There it is, Brother Michael and Hotep. You can see him here on The Culture, as well as Roland Martin Unfiltered, here on the Black Star Network, one of our great scholars and researchers here. Thank you, Brother Michael. It's always a pleasure.
Hey, thanks, Farajii. All right,
absolutely. Peace. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank each and every one of you. I thank my dynamic team, my executive producer, Joel, my guy, King Keenan, for making today happen. And, of course, I thank you, Culture Crew, for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Make sure y'all do your due diligence. Go to blackstarnetwork.com, where you can find all of the past shows, and more importantly, you can find a way to continue to support us. Make sure you go to Black Star Networks. Give, as we are looking to continue to strengthen this platform and have these conversations. Also follow us on social media, and of course, subscribe to us on other platforms, and share the content with your family and friends, and let them know that Black Star Network is rocking and rolling and here to stay. Also, while you're on social media, connect with me. You can find me at The Real Farajii on Instagram and Farajii on Twitter, and I would love to build with you. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture. And most importantly, stay tuned. Up next is RMU, Roland Martin Unfiltered, right here, exclusively here, only here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Have a great evening. Peace.